All right, so let's say, for example, that you're trying to teach yourself how to weld, and you don't want to spend a ton of money. Well, one option is to get a cheap 120 volt machine or a 230 volt machine, you know, that you can plug in at home, and there's a bunch of them. I've got two here in the shop right now. Let's take a quick look. I've got a Zenny MMA 160 and a Deco DK US MMA 160. Both of these machines will put out 160 amps. I got them both on Amazon. The Zenny I bought a while ago. This was $122 delivered to my door. The Deco I bought just recently, and I think I paid $135 for it. They're both similar in terms of what they offer. For setup, the Zenny cables are a little shorter, and the Zenny electrode holder, which is right here, is bulky and a little cheesier. I do like the smaller, more sleek Deco one a little bit better. But what you'll see is that these electrode holders are clamped to the bare end of a cable. Now, this was done temporarily to test this out. On the other end is a nice Matheson Select electrode holder, which they're not terribly expensive. I think they're under 20 bucks. So essentially what I've done is I've pigtailed these two machines together. Now, if I were going to do this long term, I would take both of the work leads, and you can see right over here these work leads are again connected to a single ground connection temporarily. Again, this was just to try this out, but basically I would splice these two cables together, and then I would have a single ground clamp on the end. And then again, I would do the same thing with the positives. I would splice those two cables together and then have a single electrode holder on the end. But it is an option. So we're going to do some welding with it, and we're going to show you kind of what you can there we are. I guess we're still running. We're going to show you what you can maybe expect in terms of performance. To test this out here real quick, I'm actually going to run 3/16" diameter electrode. I'm going to run 200 amps, so I got each of the machines set on 100. But if you were working at home and you only had access to a 120 volt outlet, you could run 1/8" electrode at 120 to 130 amps, having each machine at only 60 or 65, and plug these into a wall outlet and not be at risk of tripping a 15 amp breaker. So you might have two 120 volt circuits that you could hook up to, and you could actually run two of these machines, and the total investment would be under 300 bucks. So it's an option. Let's take a look at the welding. This is 3/16 stick electrode running off of two little cheap power supplies. I've got a Zenny and I've got my little Deco, whatever the hell it is, wired together at 100 amps each for 200 amps total. So let's see what this thing looks like. And the camera's kind of in the way, but I'm going to do my best here. It's not bad. I gotta say, it's not bad. That's kind of impressive, to be honest. honest with you. I'm going to go back to the beginning and run this last bead. This last electrode. I got one more rod left, so I'm going to burn this up. I'm pretty impressed, actually. These machines are working together quite nicely. And lowering the amperage on each, so it's increasing the duty cycle and still giving me the power I need. That's pretty neat. All right, so folks, that is that's 3/16 electrode at 200 amps. You get a little arc blow. I have trouble with this size electrode here in the booth sometimes, and for whatever reason on the heavier plate it's worse. But it's a pretty big bead. I mean, in comparison to my wire brush here, you know, it's a pretty large weld. I don't have a set of gauges in front of me, but I guess it's close to ½ inch. It's 3/8 inch thick plate, and you can see that the bead itself, the multi-pass, is maybe it's 3/8. It's about the same depth that the plate is thick. Okay, it's a little probably taller in this direction, but you know, for the homeowner that may not have the opportunity, to see someone that wants to learn to weld and you don't want to spend a ton of money, I'm going to go on the other camera. I'll show you what we got here. So, you know, to kind of wrap up on this idea of running two machines together, you know, if you're going to do this long term, you would want to wire two cables together and then make sure your work lead was hooked up to what you're going to weld, a single work lead with both cables wired in, and then of course your other cable, you would want to wire those together and then have a single stick lead coming off of those with a splice that was designed for like 1/0 cable. You'd bring the two leads into one side and you'd have a single lead coming out the other side. And it would, you know, perhaps give you an opportunity to do some work at home where you wouldn't necessarily have 230 volt power. It's a pretty cheap option, and I've been running the Deco machine for the past day. Really, I tend to forget that I even am using it, and I'm not really stopping to let it cool. I'm just welding while I'm doing some videotaping here. And it holds up well at 120, 125, 130 amps. So at 60 amps, I think both of these machines are right around 95 to 100% duty cycle, which means you could effectively weld non-stop with them all day long and not overheat them. So 220 volt outlets, two machines, total investment of, you know, of course you'd have to get a decent electrode holder and maybe a splice, but you'd be well under 300 bucks. Well, you'd be under 300 bucks. I won't say well under, but you'd be under $300, and it might be an option. Good luck.